All right, so we are at the appointed time of 7:30. So it is my privilege to call to order the February 2nd, 2023 meeting of Bridgewater Township Council. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting was provided on January 10th, 2023, with written notice and electronic notice provided by the Courier News and the Breeze, posting on the website and the bulletin board in the municipal building, and filing with the township clerk. If we could please have a roll call for attendance.
Councilman Cordilla?
Here.
Councilman Nogales?
Here.
Councilman Pedroso?
Here.
Councilman Green?
Good evening. Here.
President Kirsch?
Here. Our minutes, we will consider approval of minutes. We will consider it our next. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. All right. If everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, we will bypass number 4, minutes for approval, and consider those at our next meeting, which is scheduled for 2 weeks from tonight, February 16th. Now we will move to Township Council reports. This time I will start to my right with Councilman Cordilla.
Okay, I have two brief items this evening. Just like to remind the members of the public that on February 18th, we will have our fire district elections in the township. Some may be receiving vote by mail ballots at this time, and the others may choose to vote in person. However you choose to vote, I would ask that you read the questions related to the budget and any propositions, and please keep in mind that the fire district elections support our local fire departments and a very stout group of volunteers who dedicate their time to protect us as a community. So please give it consideration for support. I also attended the ceremony, not a ceremony, but a celebration for the Somerset Patriots for their accomplishments in 2022 in winning their league, being league champions, and having a presentation on forecasting for 2023. And then on a much lighter note, but really a very serious note, I would really like to congratulate Councilman Ring for what I witnessed this evening. In coming to the meeting tonight and coming into the council chambers, we had a scout troop in the room having Councilman Ring do a presentation on our township logo, what the government in Bridgewater is all about. And I have to say, activity like that for each one of us is a true pleasure. And Tim, I really got to say, I enjoyed witnessing what you were doing. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
That's my report.
What did you do?
Thank you. Councilman Nogales.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attended the meeting held by the Somerset Patriots baseball team, in which they expressed their thanks to both the Somerset County Freeholders and to Bridgewater Council and Mayor for the support which has contributed to 25 years of minor league baseball success in our town. At that meeting, there were several very moving tributes to the late Steve Caliper for his business leadership, and especially his passionate support for his family and for Bridgewater in general. I toured the Route 22 overpass over the brook next to the Lexus dealership. This was the spot where the flooding disrupted the large township sewage pipe and caused extensive damage to the highway service road. The State Department of Transportation has completed bridge repairs and must still provide additional rock armoring to the riverbank to protect our pipe and to prevent future problems. And I know Mr. Genova's here, and he's all over that one, because that's an important function to get that work done to protect us from future storms. Yesterday, the Federal Reserve raised the borrowing rate by another 25 basis points, which is also known as a quarter of a point. This could have a dampening effect on our 2023 road commitment. In past years, low rates enabled us to go over and above in terms of road work. I attended the meeting of the Municipal Alliance, which is the multi-dimensional group dealing with social and educational development. Peer recovery groups and workshops such as adverse childhood experiences and trauma, and Love Shouldn't Hurt, dealing with youth dating, were also discussed. That is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Ring.
Thank you, Council President. As a follow-up to our last council meeting, the Finance Committee recently met with the administration to discuss the bond ordinance that is on the agenda to be introduced this evening. I'll hold my comments regarding the bond ordinance till we introduce it in a little bit, but while we were meeting, we also did discuss timing for the 2023 budget for the Township of Bridgewater. While work is currently ongoing on the 23 budget, we were informed by the Township tax assessor that he is still waiting for the final assessment numbers from the county, which obviously are very important in defining what our revenues will be for 2023. The county plans to release this information on or about February 15th, so in the next 2 weeks or so. Working from that February 15th date, the administration and the Finance Committee mapped out a plan. The administration has committed to having a budget to the Finance Committee within 30 days of that February 15th date, or roughly around March 15th. The Finance Committee will have 30 days to review the budget amongst the committee, as well as interacting with the other town council members, recognizing, phone calls have to take place individually to avoid any meeting issues. But that would give us a targeted date to introduce at our mid-April meeting. The budget then has to be cannot be approved for another 30 days after that. Would give us a mid-May approval. So working from the February 15th date, it's 30 days for a budget to the Finance Committee, and then 30 days to introduce it, with another 30 by state law to approve it. As you've heard, the Somerset Patriots recently hosted an event to recognize their accomplishments in 2022 and to thank their key partners. I had the privilege of attending that along with my fellow council members and the mayor. On January 26th, the police department recognized the services of Officer Daly and Officer Pelly, each of whom retired after 25 years of dedicated service to the residents of Bridgewater as a police officer, and wish them well in their future endeavors. This afternoon, I attended a meeting of the Somerset Shared Ambulance Services Association, or SASA group, that was held here at the Municipal Complex. Productive discussion was held on ambulance service by the 4 towns, Manville, Southbound Brook, Raritan, and Bridgewater, that comprise SASA. And then just prior to the meeting this evening, I had the pleasure of speaking to 5 scouts from PAC 46 in Martinsville about what the governing body does and the importance of what we do and how we do the things we do. I began my scouting days, I'll say a few years back, in Martinsville, and I'm an Eagle Scout with Troop 46, so the opportunity to speak to PAC 46 from Martinsville was very rewarding to me. Finally, on some land use board updates. On January 14th, the Planning Board heard the beginning of an application for a manufacturing facility on Route 202 and 206, just north of the Green Knoll Grill. Number of issues discussed, and the application will be continued to be heard on March 14th. The next Planning Board meeting will be on February 14th, which will be a continuation of the Bridgewater Accessory Associates application for a warehouse on the corner of Chimney Rock Road and Route 22. Earlier this week, the Zoning Board of Adjustment started to hear an application to replace 4 office buildings on Route 22 with 2 warehouses. At the beginning of the meeting, Board Chairman Foose raised a concern about the notification of the hearing made to the adjoining Laurel Circle complex. While notification of the hearing was sent to the property owner, notification was not sent to a couple hundred tenants who either rent space or live in one of the care facilities there. The board attorney did confirm that the applicant is not required under state law to notify the tenants, just the property owners. So that application was heard. It will continue to be heard on March 7th. The next zoning board meeting is February 7th, which will be a continuation of a sign application on Route 22. And that is my report.
Thank you. Councilman Pedrosa.
Wow, Howard, you have competition. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Council President. Let's see here. I too attended the Somerset Patriots Appreciation event, certainly recognizing the achievements of the Patriots over the past year. Congratulations to the team and the Califer family for just doing a great job with running that organization. Certainly nice to have that team be associated with the Yankees. We also had the regional animal shelter had its annual reorganization meeting a few days ago, so that went well. And I too attended the Greeno Rescue Squad banquet dinner and installation event. Always a pleasure to participate and be part of congratulating the volunteers of our township who do so much to just make this a great township. We have so many great volunteers that just contribute so much of their time to the greater good here of our community. So that was a great event. And last thing I want to say is I want to just recognize and we had a fellow council member shot and killed overnight. Saraville Councilwoman Eunice Doomfor from Saraville apparently was shot outside her house. She's 30 years old, a young lady who, from what I read, I didn't know her personally, but certainly was an active member of her community, contributed a lot. So just want to recognize that and just send out my thoughts and prayers with her and her family, and it's a terrible thing. So that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilman. So now I guess I now know it's the joy of going last, because several of the items I was going to report on have already been stated. First, I want to acknowledge on the dais tonight is Grace Jaguna. So welcome, and thank you for your assistance tonight. In speaking about the clerk's office, those who've gotten close enough to me, and I'll defer back to you, Councilman Ring. For those who've gotten close enough to me tonight, they'll notice that I'm wearing my Cavalier King Charles tie, both because of our Cavalier King Charles at home, and also to acknowledge that the time for dog and cat licenses is now. The deadline just earlier this week, January 31st, but we are extending a grace period without late fees, but that courtesy will end soon. The clerk's office, open during its regular business hours tomorrow, 9 to 5, will also be open on Saturday from 9 to 1. So let's make sure that our dogs and cats are properly licensed. And I'll actually defer back to Councilman Ring.
Thank you. I apologize. I meant to include this in my report. So I recently shared the township's Facebook post with through my Facebook page and some groups, and I just wanted to share with the administration and with Grace a resident's comment to that post. I do not know this person, but her comment was, "I mailed in my check because it was the easiest for me. I didn't have my most up-to-date rabies shot on file, and the clerk's office called my phone and asked me to send it in rather than just rejecting my license application. I like living in Bridgewater," smiley face. So I'm not sure who interacted with Ms. Perks, but certainly I appreciate that. And when a resident posts something like that on Facebook unsolicited, it says we're doing something right. So thank you, Grace.
And I think that reinforces that we do have one of the finest, if not the finest, clerk staff in the state of New Jersey. No small feat with 500 and 60-something municipalities or whatever we have. My next few quick ones, I also was at the Green Knoll Rescue Squad installation event. I was at the Somerset Patriots event. I particularly enjoyed that. I walked away feeling almost as if I went to a game that night, which is a great feat in the month of January. As Councilman Ring mentioned, we did have a Budget Finance Committee meeting, and we'll go into some detail on that later in the agenda. I had the pleasure of speaking with a local resident, Elisa Hassanaj. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but I'll make sure you get the spelling. She is a senior at Albright College. I believe lives either on or near Garrettson Road, not too far from here. And she was interested in having an interview about local government and how does it work. And that's part of a paper she's doing for a class at Albright College. So I was pleased to speak with her. She asked many insightful questions, and I gave her an open-ended opportunity to follow up should that be necessary. The Bridgewater Raritan School District is having its referendum on March 14th. I want to acknowledge that Jen Logren is in the audience, a school board member. I had made a commitment to help to publicize some of their information sessions related to the referendum. So February 21st, 6 p.m., there is a community forum that will be at the Bridgewater Raritan Regional High School. On February 24th at 6 p.m., the Education Foundation is hosting an event that's at the Somerville Elks, which of course I have to note is actually located in Bridgewater. And on a more somber note, to kind of follow what Councilman Pedroso said, we typically focus our attention within Bridgewater's borders. However, I feel compelled to acknowledge the untimely and tragic passing of Sayreville Councilwoman Eunice Dwumfor last night. While many questions remain unanswered about the circumstances of her death, we do know that a woman duly elected to serve her community, working at a dais much like this one, was apparently targeted with violence and her life was cut short. So I just encourage everyone at their next moment of quiet reflection to consider her in your personal thoughts and prayers. And with that, I will conclude my comments, and we will move on. If Administrator Pappas, you have any comments on behalf of the mayor.
Thank you. I do have just a couple. The last resolution on the agenda, 12G, there were a couple of questions from members of the council, and there's a slightly revised version of it to address the questions that I'm just distributing now. It was prepared and reviewed by council. Would appreciate your review of it, obviously, before the conclusion of the agenda. The only other point that I would like to mention is one of the resolutions on the agenda, 12E, is for Intersoft Technologies. This is the company that produces the bills for our tax and sewer bills, and the amount is greater this year because we have now instituted an additional cycle for sewer. So someone did pose that question to me earlier, and wanted to make sure everyone understood the reasoning behind the increase from last year. And that's all that I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do not have any proclamations or presentations tonight. So if I can have a motion to open to the public, please.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so members of the public wishing to address this council on any matter will be allowed 2 minutes to speak unless there are any unusual circumstances. So this is your opportunity to address council.
Seeing none,
Rush forward, I move we close public input.
All right, we have a motion to close and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving to number 10, public hearing, final action on any ordinances we do not have tonight. So we'll move into our introduction of an ordinance. So I will read it. Bond ordinance providing an appropriation of $8 million for various road improvements, including but not limited to Fulton Avenue, Hancock Avenue, Duval Street, Farmer Road, Juniper Lane, Birch Drive, Evergreen Drive, Hillside Avenue, Orchard Street, Loft Drive, and Eastbrook Road, including curbing, milling, paving, drainage, sewer, and other miscellaneous improvements, and various road overlays throughout the township in and by the Township of Bridgewater, County of Somerset, New Jersey, and authorize the issuance of $7.6 million bonds or notes of the township for financing part of this appropriation. We had a detailed presentation on this at our last meeting. Mr. Pappas, any commentary on this?
No, that was quite thorough. Certainly be happy to respond to any questions. And as Councilman Ring mentioned, we did have a meeting of the Finance Committee and presented details that we thought did address some of the questions that had been put forth.
Okay, thank you. And what I'd like to do is just acknowledge the math, 7.6 million plus $400,000 will yield the full 8 million. The $400,000 will be considered at next meeting as a resolution providing for an appropriation from the current fund capital improvement, from the current capital improvement fund. So 7.6 plus 0.4 is how we reach the 8. And I guess I'll recognize Councilman Ring if you want to go into any additional detail of our Budget Finance Committee meeting as it relates to this topic.
Sure. Thank you. So at our last meeting, there was some discussion, I'll say concerns regarding our ability to move forward on this ordinance without a budget for 2023 in place. The discussion that has taken place with the CFO and the administration and the Finance Committee, which includes Council President Kirsch and myself, the money, assuming we move forward with this, by the time design work is done, going out to bid, all the work involved, it's finished, financing, we would not see any payment due on this until August of 2024 from a timing point of view. So, we go back to 2021, we had committed to 5 years at $8 million per year. 2021, we bonded $8 million. It was initially held in short-term financing. We have since gotten long-term financing on that and making payments. The money we bonded last year in 2022, we are still not making payments, and we will not have a payment due until August of this year. So it's about an 18-month lag from the time we go out with the ordinance till the work is done, paperwork's finalized, and payments started. So, that having been said, the real question is, does our CFO feel comfortable with the fact that we can take on this additional payment starting in the second half of 2024? Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball as to what things, God forbid, might happen, another remnants of Ida or COVID that could impact our budget. But the preliminary modeling would suggest that, yes, this is not an issue for us to take on in 2024. So, did I summarize that?
You summarized it very well. I'll simply add that Councilman Ring and I pressed on the point that we can comfortably absorb this new commitment, taking into account, obviously, the commitments from the first couple of years of the program. And the answer that we got was not only the $400,000, which presumably we will authorize as the down payment, but that, as you kind of roll on the various portions of the debt, that we certainly can continue to absorb that comfortably. And still deliver what we believe will be a very fiscally conservative and taxpayer-friendly budget for 2023. Of course, the details of that will come on the timeline that Councilman Ring mentioned earlier. So any other questions, comments, or discussion? Yes.
I have a question. We talk about curbing. For those streets or portions of street that do not currently have curbing now, and I'll draw your attention to Juniper Lane, which has two pieces of it. There's a newer piece that's full width and has curbs and sidewalks, but then there's another piece, about a half a mile on the Country Club side that does not have any curbs nor sidewalks. In fact, I don't even think this piece of road meets our SIS standards, but would we be installing curbs on streets that did not have curbs before?
That's generally our policy, unless there is an instance where there would have to be a significantly larger scale drainage project that would be required to manage any of the runoff that would be managed through curbing. Generally speaking, I made a note, I will specifically check on Juniper, but that's generally our policy.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Councilman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pappas, my question is for you. I'm certainly aware that the administration intends to come before this governing body at the next council meeting and ask to increase the capital improvement fund by $400,000 in excess of the temporary budget that we passed of 26.25% of the total appropriations of 2022. My question to you is, why can't that $400,000 that's needed be included in already the appropriation authorizations that we gave the administration back at the reorganization meeting?
The actual vehicle that would be before the council would be an emergency appropriation of $400,000 that would be included in the capital improvement line item in the budget. That is what had been done in 2022. The capital improvement budget in 2023, I believe, totaled $500,000. Excuse me, in the approved budget, $400,000 of it was identified earlier in the year when the council introduced and approved the $8 million bond ordinance. So so to answer your question, that was the finance officer's recommendation that that is a more appropriate way to allocate the $400,000, because again, it would be specifically for the capital improvement fund, or be taken from the capital improvement fund.
So it's a question of which line item it's coming from.
Correct.
So just so I'm clear, so the approval that the administration received in January for the 26.25%, this $400,000 will be in addition to that?
Yes, correct.
So why can't the administration maintain the 26.25% and just, instead of asking us for more money, just move items around so that it's already included in what was approved?
I think because the 26.2% that you mentioned is the statutorily permitted amount that a temporary budget could maintain, at least initially, and those funds are allocated to those areas that are needed to maintain operations for that initial period, calendar period of the calendar year 2023. The $400,000, again, is specifically for a capital improvement, and that would be reflected in the budget that the administration will present to the council to be included in the capital improvement fund or line item in the entire budget.
So maybe you can alleviate my concern. The way I look at that is like this, and maybe I'm misreading it and I'm wrong. So if we take 26.25% and if we were to multiply that by 4, it would really equal a net 5% increase over last year's appropriations, right? So a 5% increase what that number would result in. So if the administration is unable to maintain its expenditures within that 26.25%, can I then, is the expectation that there'll be an increase in the overall budget by 5%?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I couldn't make that prediction at this point. We are, the overall budget that the administration will submit to the council, we need to wait and see, as Mr. Ring said, what the assessment levels are. The proposed tax rate will be part of those considerations. and the amount of surplus from last year hasn't been fully calculated and presented. So those details are pretty important, obviously, to craft the entirety of the budget. But as I think someone had said once before, the administration felt that this is a very important priority. And in order to take advantage of competitive pricing, to be able to go out to bid earlier in the year, it's very, very critical that we make this presentation, make this request to the council. So I think the mayor understands your specific concern. I believe he shares it. But a decision, frankly, a judgment had to be made. Would we want to risk missing out on competitive pricing that we would likely see if we go out to bid early in the year? And the answer to that was no. We felt that was very critical, and if the council was wanting to move forward with the road project, this would be a priority that was being made, and that the budget and other priorities, frankly, would have to become secondary to this.
Mr. Pappas, the 26.25%, the temporary budget, is it 26.25% of last year's operating budget or last year's total budget?
The approved budget.
So the
Approved budget.
The approved budget.
so not the operating budget then?
No, it would be, you know,
would include
what was
the-
approved. What was approved. Not what was spent, what was approved.
And that number's set by the state. That wasn't our idea.
It's the total budget.
Correct, correct.
So essentially, Mr. Pappas, it is intended to allow us to operate for the quarter, which is where the 25% comes from, and then a little bit of excess to account for the fact that costs in the first quarter of 2023 may exceed what they did in 2022, gas, energy, kind of anything.
Yeah.
So
fuel-
it's a
Yeah.
limited safety valve to,
History dictates that billing tends to come in a little later in the year.
Understood.
So if you have a 26% thing, it can carry you more than just a quarter away from
okay. Any other questions? Because I think the floor is still with Mr. Pedrosa.
Thank you, sir. Well, I mean, this is really, I guess, the heart of where my concerns were focused at the last meeting. And I don't view it as a little excess, Council President. I mean, I view it as a statutory maximum, which is already at 5%, and I view that to be a pretty high number myself. I think, certainly as a council member, I've always had a goal that we were fiscally conservative in our expenditures, and I certainly hope that we would all share that, and I think we do for the most part. So really the heart of my problem is that, first of all, I like the road program, so I want to make that 100% clear. I like the road program, I like the administration's goals. I believe our roads need repair. And I think that the mayor has taken on, courageous leadership in making that go forward. And I'm pleased that that's happening. So I want to make that clear. I support the road program. But like everything else in life, when it comes to spending money, we have to know how much money we're receiving. So we have to really know what our budget is. And my issue is, my concern is that we're being asked to approve a significant bond without having the budget, sort of in the blind, not knowing how much we can afford. And so there's a lot of talk. Consistently I hear that, and I'm quoting other people saying, we committed. However, I've always made myself very clear that I support the road program. I hope we can always afford it. I hope we can keep it. But I've always been clear that to me, it's not just a black and white, but we have to approve $8 million every year because we have to consider how that impacts our budget year after year. And so to me, every year, the consideration comes de novo in my mind as to whether or not this year we can afford to maintain $8 million, if $8 million is the right number. And I think it should be analyzed year after year. I think that's responsible fiscal management. And having said that, without having a budget, I can't make a decision whether I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing for the Bridgewater taxpayer. I don't know, I feel like to support something, to support spending $8 million without having a budget, to me, feels fiscally irresponsible. And I don't want to, I don't feel like I'm doing the right thing to the Bridgewater taxpayers. So I think it's just premature. I don't support it at this point. If I had the budget, I may very well support it and be very enthusiastic about it. But I'm sorry, I just don't have the numbers, so I can't support it.
Any other questions or comments?
I do support this. I think this is a commitment we've made, one that I hope we will honor, but we need to take advantage of our early bidding to get the best bang for the bucks. And with that in mind, I would move this item.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second it with a comment also. I respect what Councilman Pedrosa is saying, but I also respect the commitment that we have made to the residents to repair the roads. And no matter how we look at it, there's going to be a cost. No doubts about it. And I think if we take the bond ordinance as an opportunity to get an early start on the program this year, I believe the benefit is that we could be receiving better pricing, getting more roads done and so forth. And I think, to me, that's the priority, because I do believe in the comments that Councilman Ring made after meeting with the administration and with comments from our finance officer, that we should feel pretty comfortable about doing the bond to support the program. I also know that we all understand that as we move forward, as issues come up, there will be adjustments and so on. But I think it's really important that we honor our commitment to get the roads done and work our way through it. And if we could take advantage of early pricing, I think we should. The planning that has been done for this program has been excellent, and I plan to support it.
All right, and I'll just make the brief comment that I'm very comfortable that this year's budget will be able to accommodate this commitment. I'm confident that this year's budget will properly account for previous year's commitment, and I think that that's really the firmest justification for moving ahead. I think that if we ever do have dire economic circumstances or other matters to consider, that's where potentially in a future year we may want to pump the brakes. But we candidly are fortunate to now be in a good condition, relatively speaking. We finished 2022 in a position of strength, and that's why I think it makes sense to make this commitment, to make it early, as has been pointed out, so that we can get the advantage of hopefully lower bids, get materials secured, and start getting some road work done. So I think we do have a motion and a second. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
Not at this time, no.
Councilman Ring?
Yes.
President Kirsch?
And my vote is yes. And if we could have a date for the public hearing, please.
Yes, the final public hearing for this ordinance is scheduled for February 16th here in this courtroom at 7:30. Copies of these ordinances are available to the public.
Thank you. So we'll move to resolutions. 12A, 2023 appointments of the Regional Center Partnership designated representatives. These are mayor appointments: Matthew J. Mensch, Michael J. Pappas, and Andrew Fresco.
Yeah, I'll move them. I'm the council rep for the Regional Center Partnership. I've been working with the administrator and the mayor and Mr. Fresco on this board for a while. They're certainly excellent contributors to the meetings. I'll support it.
Okay. Second for that nomination? Or, excuse me, for that resolution?
We're just recognizing it's the mayor's appointment.
Correct. That's what it says in the therefore be it resolved that our municipal clerk is directed to notify the Regional Center Partnership of these appointments. They are made by Mayor Mensch. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Just for
Seconded.
Conversation?
I mean, just clarity, it's a mayor's appointment. Is this just more of an acknowledgement to be able to send to the Regional Center Partnership, or?
We're really just recognizing it, that's all.
That's, yeah, okay.
Well, does it require consent advice from council or not?
No,
No.
we are not giving any advice.
It's a courtesy review, that's all.
Okay, well, then I move to check off the box and
All right, so we're checking a box. Did I get a second yet?
You did.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All of
Was there a question?
No, I second.
Okay, terrific. And if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
yes, congratulations, Mr. Pappas.
Thank you.
Councilman Green?
I approve checking the box.
President Kirk?
Yes, one more hat, Mr. Pappas. Congratulations.
He needs a bigger business card.
12B, authorizing sale of plenary retail distribution license. Minimum bid for consideration shall be $450,000. Mr. Pappas, any commentary?
This will be the second time we are pursuing sale of this, and we're hoping that this will be a successful effort.
If I may, Mr. President. I think we're being undercut by our governor because he's gone public on wanting to increase the number of alcohol distribution licenses. So some of the funds that we've been able to gain in the past in selling these licenses may not be forthcoming in the future if people believe that the governor wants to give these away at the corner.
Yeah, I mean, that unfortunately is true. The value of these licenses, either for those that are already held or for ones that may be purchased, seem to have an element of the unknown attached to them at this time. I guess just
I'll move the
Okay.
resolution for what it is worth.
Okay.
I will second it with a comment as well. Talking to some folks, there's no question there's been a softening of the value of liquor licenses in the state of New Jersey. It was, this went out to bid last year. We had no bidders on it. It was rumored last year the governor was going to make changes, and I think that factored into it. And at his State of the State address earlier this year, he made it well known he wants to drive down the cost of liquor licenses to make them more accessible to more folks. So I guess the good news is he's got a plan, but he doesn't have a detailed plan yet. So there's still some hope that we could do something with this. But I would agree with Councilman Norgalis, we are being undercut. So.
And I don't recall exactly which one of you made this comment to me privately. This is not unlike what seems to be happening in New York City with the taxi medallions purchased at a time when potentially it was expected they could be worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and then obviously Uber, Lyft, and other factors came to be to significantly reduce that. But it is our hope and expectation that at $450,000, we will hopefully get some response. So I believe I have a motion and a second, and I'd like to have a roll call on 12B.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
Yes,
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Kirk?
Yes, with just the final commentary that just confirming this license is now available for sale because of the small uptick in our population, reflecting that we are now over 45,000, whereas during the previous decade we were, I believe, just under 45,000 population. Thank you very much. 12C, authorizing award of contract for professional legal services, municipal public defender to Scott Mitzner, Esquire, for the one-year term commencing January 1st, 2023, compensation at a rate of $600 for each municipal court session not to exceed $20,000.
So moved.
Second.
Any conversation, discussion? Okay, let's go to a roll call, please.
Councilman Padilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
yes,
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Kirk?
Yes. D, authorizing award of contract to Rehabco, Inc., located at 44 East Water Street in Toms River, New Jersey, 08753, to serve as the township's administrative agent for affordable housing and provide housing rehabilitation program services for a 12-month period commencing January 1st, 2023, in an amount not to exceed $180,000, paid from the township's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Any commentary, I guess, either from Mr. Pappas or Mr. Corsini?
This is the entity that we engaged the middle part of last year. They are doing a very, very good job for us, and recommending them again. One of the members of the council had asked, could council receive a report quarterly from them, and we certainly will make sure that happens.
That's a question. What do they do?
They serve, the administrative agent is an important part of the operation of the affordable housing program. Those individuals that would be interested in either purchasing an affordable housing unit or renting have to go through a vetting process because they have to meet certain financial requirements. And this entity, among other things, actually is the point of contact and actually has an initial application, has a more formal vetting process. They almost act as both a real estate agent as well as almost as if you're applying for a mortgage. There's a very detailed set of standards that they are required to meet, and it's quite a massive undertaking.
Do you know how many applicants we get per year?
I don't know. It can sometimes be certainly in the hundreds, if not beyond that, but they don't go through a detailed vetting initially. You know, for instance, if there's a unit that is being marketed, 50, 100 people will walk through it. They will not be vetted until they complete an application and they demonstrate or provide certain financial information that indicates that they are eligible. Some people think that they might be eligible, but they are above the income thresholds. And so they don't go through the detailed vetting until they have some preliminary information.
And there
Question.
are also limits on the amount of, I'll call it profit, that the previous owner can have. This is not market-based. There's a specific, a very complex process in terms of the percentage of gain that can accrue over the years. So.
Question. This isn't something that we can do in-house legally?
So we used to do it in-house, if you, Councilman Pedro, so if you remember Patty Panavati, but the program had somewhat lapsed, and the consultant has gotten it back on track and much more efficient.
I mean, because we're $180,000, we could hire 2 or 3 secretaries, right, for that price.
It's not secretarial work, Councilman. It is.
You have to truly understand all the affordable housing rules. There's different levels of affordable housing, who can qualify at what level.
Okay, but I could still see that if we could hire then a administrator position for less than $180,000 to do this. So my question is...
If I can, good, complete your question.
You know, my question is, has there been any consideration to bringing this in-house?
Yeah, each municipality has an individual that has to be certified as a municipal housing liaison. That's me. And I am ultimately the individual that is supervising this program. And an important part of this program, this consultant's activities, is to ensure that the court settlement is being adhered to. There are certain requirements in that affordable housing, the COA court settlement, that the township has been required to complete. And this process, since the mayor has taken office, we have had some efforts that needed to be made to ensure that we are on track. And I don't know that that was the case before.
If I may, just from looking at some of the stuff they do besides, what we think might be administrative stuff or administrative stuff, they also are responsible for maintaining our Bridgewater Township Affordable Housing Operating Manual in compliance with the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls Act, as well as work on the state's down payment assistance program, 1 month's rent program, the homeowners association fee assistance program, the group home assistance program, the tax lien assistant program, the special rehab, and the emergency repair program. I think given all of that, while there may be some value to exploring in-house, I don't think it's something we're getting someone hired tomorrow and trained on all of that.
The other important part of this was a housing rehabilitation program. I can't recall the number of units. The consultant, again, there's an initial application. They do an initial vetting. Again, there's certain income requirements and asset requirements that people have to meet. And then there is an inspector that this consultant sends to the property to conduct the inspection, to then and then to ensure that any code violations are addressed. And then at the conclusion of the renovations, that inspector then goes to ensure that the contractor has fulfilled their requirements legally and as per code. So that's another component of the entire court settlement, that every municipality has to have a certain number of units that are rehabbed.
So my office undertook a substantial review of this last year. Initially, when the new administration came in, and again last year, there are various memos that were submitted to council last year at various stages of this approval process that I'm happy to provide to anyone on the council who would like to for a refresher on this.
And because in the past, although the process has functioned, we don't know about it. So a quarterly report back from REHABCO will keep us in tune, so next year we won't be asking the same questions because we'll know what they've been doing.
Also, the funds are paid, the position is really paid for by developers through the COVID Trust Fund.
So to Councilman Norgalis's comment about the quarterly report, I will move 12D with the stipulation that we get a quarterly activity report from REHABCO.
Second.
Just a quick question or comment before we go to vote. Mr. Pappas, is it fair to say this is a heavy compliance responsibility?
Yes, and when we started this, I was having weekly conference calls with the consultant because there were decisions that had to be made. There were areas that I wanted to ensure that we were in compliance with that court settlement. That's very, very critical, and so a lot of attention was given to this, and I've continued now, frankly, not weekly, but when needed, to ensure that I'm aware that this is being, these matters are being addressed. I'm confident in this consultant. The consultant that we used before was very helpful in kind of bringing us up to speed where we needed to be, but certainly the council's entitled to and will get those quarterly reports.
And Mr. Pappas, is it fair to say that any lapses in compliance would likely result in considerable time and or potential financial costs?
Yes, and you could potentially be in violation of your court settlement, and we cannot have that. And if I can do anything about it, we're not going to have any issue there.
Thank you.
Just to make clear, my question should not, my question...
Sure that nobody on council goes to jail, that we know who did.
My question should not be an implication that I don't support this. I mean, we have to pass this tonight. I'm not disputing that. I was just seeing whether or not there's some room for next year for us to make a modification. I mean, obviously, we're not,
Right.
You're not in a position to change that right now, but it is a substantial amount of money, and I think that I'm aware of some of the things that Mr. Councilman Romang has read off, and I appreciate that, but I still see that there is possibility that a person could do these tasks. Now, I don't know for sure. I'm curious to get these reports. I'm glad that it was requested, and I think next year we think about this, but perhaps a little bit sooner than we need to.
I would just say this, the level of understanding that an administrative agent has to have, there are not a lot of people that are not associated with consultants like this that have that understanding. There are many private developers that have people with that certification that I've mentioned or a certification that he might have that are hired to assist them in managing an affordable housing component if they, let's say, have rentals. But to as I've come to understand this pretty detailed manner, we would have to have one or two people who were extremely trained and experienced, and I don't think we could get that kind of experience for that amount. I mean, we could always explore it, but
Administrator Pappas, if I may, as I noted, there's voluminous documents on this last year. Councilman Pedrosa was uncomfortable with voting on this tonight. There's no reason why we can't put this off 2 weeks and he can come to my office and we can go over it.
I didn't say that.
You said that you didn't have enough time.
No, I didn't say that. In fact, I said just the opposite. I said my question should not be an implication that I don't support this. I am ready to vote and support this tonight, but I think that it would be reasonable for us to, based upon whatever data we get back now from them, that we can keep it back of our minds that there are other options that we can consider in the future, but I'm ready to vote in favor of this
Forgive me,
tonight.
Councilman, I thought you said something about having the information sooner.
No.
So,
All right.
I didn't
So
say
it sounds like we have more than consensus, so let's go to a roll call vote at 12D.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Kirsch?
Yes. At 12E, authorizing award of professional service contract to Intersoft Technologies located at 195 Carter Drive in Edison, New Jersey, 08817 for for General Ledger Computer Software Solutions, annual maintenance, mailing of sewer and tax bills for the amount of $55,000 to be funded from the 2022 current budget account for the period January 1st. Should that read 2023 through December 31st, 2023?
I thought this was actually the 22 period, right?
That was my understanding.
Is it, it's the 22
Yes.
period?
This is a catch-up.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a catch-up, okay, all right, I just want to be sure, all right, so just for correction, this is the 2022 current budget account, the period January 1st, 2022 through January 31st, 2022, and I guess, Mr. Papps, you'd already commented the reason why this is higher than previous years is because of our movement to the two-cycle payment option as compared to one.
correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for that confusion if I created any questions.
Just to add to that, because I did discuss this with the deputy administrator as well, it's because of that higher amount with the modifications last year, it pushed it above the threshold where we had to approve it. So we shouldn't have to do this again this year. The 2022 amount was higher because of the modifications to the sewer bill. Modifications are made already, and we shouldn't have that same issue in 23. It was a one-time charge, I'm told.
Thank you.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other comments, I'll take a motion on 12E.
So moved.
And a second I hear to my right, and a roll call, please.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Kirsch?
Yes. At 12F, we are authorizing an increase of the contract for Kaufman, Semirano, and Liebman LLP. We will make the correction on the spelling to 2 Executive Drive, suite number 530 in Fort Lee, New Jersey, 07024, for legal matters requiring special counsel from $10,000 to $18,000. Commentary from either Mr. Pappas or Mr. Corsini.
The Township had engaged this firm to assist in review of at least one project whose homeowners association had increased their fees to the affordable housing designated units. There was an extensive review and options that were needed to be researched, presented to the administration, I think, to members of council, and it was determined not to move forward with some of the options, but this is an obligation that we need to pay.
it's a matter I'm recused on because I live in the association.
Okay, any questions?
So moved.
Move. A second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Kirsch?
Yes. And at 12G, just a question for the dais. An update for this was distributed earlier during this meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read that update, or do we need to just take a few seconds pause so everybody can do that?
Mr. Chairman, I've read it, and I have to admit I'm confused about the whole process here. It seems to me that the military service that we're talking about was almost 20 years before the individual was hired by the township. And while I support veterans, God bless them all, I just don't understand how serving so many years ahead of being hired by the township, by Bridgewater Township, entitles him to a higher level of township benefits.
If I may, military service is recognized as, in effect, time served towards whether it's teachers or others. In this case, I share one of your thoughts. I'm a little confused as to, I understand the person had 22 years and that there was a suggestion that he had served some of the military time, but they haven't been bridged at the state level. I think we need to table this one for a little bit more introspection to make sure, because normally people can retire after 22 years, but they're not entitled to health benefits until they reach 25 years of successful service. And I guess there's some question as to how the 22 years and the military service at whatever time was effectively bridged.
Okay, I hear a motion to table. I think that there is a desire to treat our retired employee appropriately while still being good fiscal stewards today. So I believe that tabling would be appropriate. So there is a motion. Is there a second on that motion to table 12G?
I'll second it.
Okay. If we could have a vote on tabling, but considering at our next available meeting 12G.
What did Councilman Cordilla ask for?
Tabling.
To
I understand,
table,
but why-
and-
for why?
and the basis, maybe he could repeat it.
Yeah, well, basically, we have several issues here. The individual at time of retirement in 1993 had 22 years of service. It is alleged that there were 3 years of military service, which would serve as a bridging time to get him to 25 for the health benefits. He was entitled to a pension, but the question is, if the military service number of years had been bridged by the state, this would not even be an issue today. But evidently, it was not. And from an evidentiary standpoint, there's no real confirmation that we have in hand of the military service that is alleged to have taken place.
But wasn't all that reviewed and considered and determined back in 1993?
In 1993, it was not the service, whatever level of service was or was not merged at the state level, which is the requirement. The state has to say, okay, we certify it so that those good years can be added to the 22 to bring the total number to 25.
This came to light when we transitioned to the state health benefits program because the state flagged it and said, no, this is an issue. So,
But he's been receiving health benefits since 1993?
Yes.
As a retiree, yes.
I think in light of the fact that we just received an updated resolution and there's some questions, I think Councilman Nargales' and Councilman Cordilla's motion to table would be appropriate.
All right.
All right, so if we could have a roll call on tabling 12G with an understanding that it will be considered at its earliest possible date.
Councilman Cordilla?
Yes.
Councilman Nogales?
Yes.
Councilman Pedrosa?
Yes.
Councilman Green?
Yes.
President Kirsch?
Yes, so that brings us to the end of our consideration of resolutions. For closed session, we have one item, so I'll read the resolution.
Could I ask that we add a second item? Chris, how do I categorize that?
One of the members of the council could move to amend the resolution.
Okay, can I ask what the topic is so we'll know what the resolution, what the amendment will be?
Or amend it.
Amending the agenda, resolution 13, whatever, to add. Okay, what is it?
Chris, how would you characterize that? What I spoke to you about just a moment ago.
Personnel.
Okay, so I guess first I'll take a motion to amend our closed session resolution to add a second item, personnel. So can I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
And a second, can I do yay and nay on that, or do I need a roll call? All right, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now our resolution will read, be it resolved by the Bridgewater Township Council that this body will now hold a closed meeting to discuss both land acquisition and personnel. When and if the matters discussed become public record, this will be made known to the public at that time. The public is excluded from said meeting, and further notice thereof is dispensed with, all in accordance with Sections 8 and 4A of the Open Public Meetings Act. And just for clarity, do we expect to take action at the, we do or do not intend to take action? No action is expected. We expect to reconvene only for the purpose of adjournment. So I'll take that motion, please.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and I believe we need a roll call, which I will conduct. Mr. Councilman Cardilla.
Yes.
Councilman Norgales.
Yes.
Councilman Pedroso.
Yes.
Councilman Ring.
Yes.
And myself, Council President Kirsch, I also vote yes. So we are moving to closed session. All right, we're good to be. All right, we have the door closed. We have the publication off. So why don't we go in the order that we anticipated? So I'll recognize Councilman Cardilla for the land acquisition conversation.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'll pass out some over maps so we have a clear understanding of where the property is.
Thank you.
Okay, if you recall, a few meetings ago, I mentioned that the Open Space Committee was looking at a property. Here, the information on the property is that it is the estate of Dave Stempian, and it is on the map that you see in front of you. It is the yellow portion, a little bit over 5 acres, and it is accessible off of Steel Gap Road, and it is adjacent to the Wemple property, which is what you see as Block 712, which is already an open space parcel. In the evaluation of the property, one criteria that stands out when we evaluate properties is the adjacency to either to another open space parcel or township property, a wooded area, or whatever the case might be. And what we have on, what checks off very well on this parcel is two things. Number one, Block 712, the green area is a pretty heavily wooded area. We already have it in our open